Hey, Rifters, welcome to the show. Subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. I'm so glad I made it. I will probably tell the story when the guest comes in. I feel that is more important. Great guest. You've seen this guest on Comedy Central, Conan O'Brien. He's the co-host of one of my favorite podcasts. I do listen to a lot of podcasts because I do try hard not to ask the same questions, but sometimes it is undeniable you do ask the same questions. And so I do listen to this podcast that I really recommend. And it's funny, it's fun. It's not really an interview thing, it's more like a hey, let's play games and get to know each other. And I'm talking about Never Not Funny with Jimmy Pardo. So Jimmy Pardo was kind enough to do Reza Riffs via Zoom. I'm very excited. And yeah, man, it's gonna be great. Subscribe, rate, and review, and enjoy Razor Riffs with Jimmy Pardo.
From Hollywood, California, welcome to Reza Riffs with your host, Keith Reza.
All right. Hey, Jimmy Pardo. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. I apologize. I took a sip there. I thought there'd be a little bit more going on prior.
I already did the opening remarks. Maybe I should have said that before.
That might have been, yes. I did not know the opening remarks. I assumed that, or at least there'd be some buildup on, this guy from, and that would give me a chance to take a sip of something. Instead, It was, I hear an automated voice telling me we're recording, and then hello, and then I'm taking a sip like an amateur. So
I am so sorry. That was my bad because I worked so hard, and then I was like, right when I did it, I was like, oh crap.
It's I just listen. I'm not putting the blame on you. I just want the listener to know it's not on me.
Oh man. But no, Jimmy, I wanted to let you know, first of all, I know how busy you are because you have your own show and stand-up. So thank you so much for actually taking time to say yes and doing this. It really does mean a lot to me because I know you get this a lot, but as a podcaster, I feel you're very one of the pioneers. You know what I mean? There's maybe Tom Green, then there's you.
Is Tom Green before me? Not so sure Tom Green was before me.
It was probably at the same time. You don't think so?
I want to say it was Ricky Gervais. As far as comedy goes, it was Ricky Gervais, Keith and the Girl, The Onion, and me. I want to say we were the ones. And then I think Mark Maron came along not far after. Comedy Bang Bang became went from radio show to a podcast. Then I don't know where. Then I think it just all becomes a blur.
Well, I've been listening to Never Not Funny since 2008, and so I know that was like because it was on iTunes and stuff. So
we started 2006.
Yeah, so maybe that's why I thought Tom Green, because Tom Green was definitely on 2008. So
I will take your word for it. I've met Tom Green once. He was the nicest man in the world.
Yeah.
And then we said, let's keep in touch, and we've never spoken again. So I put that on Tom. Maybe Tom didn't care for me. I'm going to put it on. Well, I'll take the blame for this. I blame you for the opening, and I'll blame me for Tom Green not wanting to be friends.
I didn't mean it like that. I'm just saying, like,
I know.
Either way, you were one of the first.
I don't disagree with that. That is something I will agree with.
Yeah. So I just want to say thank you because I do pleasure. Know. Yeah. And I also want to say, I think, because I get it rejected by a lot of managers and publicists, and I think your manager is the coolest one. So I think that's awesome.
I've been with Bruce, my manager, Bruce, since 1995.
Wow.
So 29 years. We'll be together 30 years next year. Bruce is a good man. He cares about people. And so he doesn't reject out of hand. He brings me everything.
Yeah.
And some managers don't do that. Some managers will just reject knowing that their client is going to say no. But you know what? Sometimes there's, something in the email or, I do say no to 99.9% of things, but every now and then there's something in the email that's like, you know what? I got an hour for this kid. Let me throw this kid an hour. See what happens.
Oh, I thank you.
I'm the hero.
Yeah. I'm just saying you have good teams. That's what I'm saying.
I am very lucky that I have a decent team around me that has gotten me to, I'd like to say to the middle of show business, but I'm not even sure I'm that high up. But sure.
I wanted to ask you when you started podcasting, did you have a feeling that it was going to become this big
Oh,
because
hell
like
no.
yeah, because now everyone has a
Yeah, it
podcast.
was, I started this because a kid that was a fan of mine, a guy by the name of Matt Belknap, who has now been my producer and co-host since we started in 2006. We've been together for 18 years as a business slash performing team, although it's my show and he knows it's my show.
Yeah.
He came to me as a fan and said, "Do you want to do a podcast? I'll produce it." And then I didn't really know what it was. I just knew that Ricky Gervais had one that I was enjoying, and I listened to some Abbott and Costello podcasts, and there might have been one other one in there, but they were kind of old timey radio things. And Gervais was the one that was the most current. And I was like, you know what? I don't know what that is, but yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
And we did it for a year or two. We did it for 2 years, and it kind of felt like we were just kind of doing cable access television, like we're just kind of entertaining shut-ins that don't know how to change the channel. Like I didn't know, and we had a bit of a following, and we're very lucky that iTunes liked us early and featured us early. And but I really thought, like, what are we doing here, man? This isn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
And then it went somewhere. So to answer that was a long-winded way of saying that. I mean, I not only did I not have any idea, we toyed with the idea of, well, we gave it a shot. We had fun. But,
Yeah.
this isn't going anywhere. It's dead. We're at let's stop. And then luckily we didn't stop, and here we are.
So like the thing that I do like about podcasting, because when it first started, I think no one had an idea how it was going to be, but it did eventually replace radio. And now I would like to argue it's starting to replace late night. You know what I mean?
I think it's replacing late night more than replacing radio, to be honest with you. I think that more people are doing, especially with Conan O'Brien and, Maron and to a lesser extent, Joe Rogan and his ilk. And the nonsense I do and Corolla and what he does. But I think people still like, there's still a comfort to listen to local radio. I'm not one to write off local radio just yet, because I think there's something I think there's not only entertainment value, but I think it's important. You get your local news, you get your local traffic, and you're getting local comedy.
Yeah.
And then you could accentuate that and with podcasts and stuff like that. That's my take. Whereas I think to your point about late night, we're all kind of making national jokes, and
Right.
So I think that and by the way, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. There's also that's always available on the table, that I don't know what I'm talking about.
No, I mean, I semi agree. When I say radio, I mean kind of like the late night radios, because when I went to bed as a kid, I would listen to the radio instead of watching the TV, and now I just listen to podcasts.
What would you listen to? Like, I don't know where are you here in California?
Yeah, I'm in Huntington Beach. Yeah.
Oh, you're down there. You're in the OC. Okay,
Yeah.
that's trouble.
So maybe I'm labeled as a bro. I don't know.
Yeah, okay. Or maybe there may be a red hat somewhere in that house. I'm concerned.
The only red hat I have is the sports hat from Norm Macdonald has a show.
Love it. Love it.
I opened up for Norm for 9 years. So
wait, what?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So,
why is that not in the email? See, that's not even. Is that in the email?
No, because I don't like to use Norm's name to get guests.
That's fair. You know what? Good for you. That's class. Norm Macdonald made me laugh one time harder than I've ever laughed. I'll tell you. Just my quick. I've got a couple. I knew Norm not very well by any means. Certainly not like you did. But we were doing on the same day we were doing Byron Allen's Comics Unleashed.
Yeah.
And as Todd Glass says, he's never seen comics more leashed. And so Norm was recording, I guess like Byron would do 4 episodes in a day. So Norm did his 2 episodes, and then there was a little break, and then I was to do my 2 episodes. And I didn't know Norm really at all. I just knew him kind of like, we're both in comedy. We both kind of, would see each other. To me, he was Norm Macdonald, and I'm just this jackass Jimmy Pardo. Right. But we both were in the same circles, and so we both had a respect for each other. And so I show up, and I'm with my wife, Danielle, who may have been just my girlfriend at the time. And so I walk in, and out of almost cartoonish, out of a dressing room, an arm reaches out, grabs me by the a hand reaches out, grabs me by the arm, pulls me into a dressing room. I don't know why it's happening. And it's Norm going, Jimmy, you got to get out of here. You got to get out of here. This is horrible. It's just absolutely horrible. You got to get out of here. This is a nightmare. They hated me. They're going to hate you. You got to get out of here. And I'm in my head going, well, they might not have liked you, Norm, because in my head, like, because you're too smart. Like you're so meta and weird that maybe that audience didn't get you. They're gonna like me, dude. That's what I was thinking. But I was also
Yeah.
like, oh geez, Norm, okay. Like my outwardly, I was like, oh man, I'm sorry that it went so bad for you. Oh man, I hope it doesn't go bad for me. And but inwardly, I'm like, that's gonna be fine for me. I appeal to all audiences. Norm's very niche. And so I get out there and they hate me. They can't. The audience cannot hate me more. They at one point they actively booed one of my jokes. It was so horrible. And so I come off. So we finished that one show, and I come off. I say to my wife and manager, the aforementioned Bruce, "You got to get me out of this." Norm was right. This is horrible. I'm not going to do the second show. This is a nightmare. And Norm is there. He stayed to go. I don't do an impression. He goes, "I told you," and it was just gorgeous. Like. So Norm and I, sadly, till his death, we shared that wonderful moment as a running gag about how we both bombed on the Byron Allen Comics Unleashed on the same day. But editing made us look great.
Oh yeah. It's one of those things where I think just recently in the past 2 weeks, a lot of my interviews I've been like talking about Norm because his death anniversary is coming in a couple days.
Yeah.
But I really don't enjoy that clickbait thing,
That's smart. Good for you.
So,
I mean, good for you. I think that's class. That's a class act. So, but I interrupted you. You said I opened for Norm for years. You were going somewhere, and then I interrupted you with my story about how Norm.
oh no, I was saying that was the only red hat I had because I wrote on the show, and I realized red is no longer popular. That's what I'm trying to say.
Red denotes a certain cult fan base, I believe.
Speaking of red, you're drinking a Coke Zero.
Delicious Coke Zero, yes.
Have you tried? It came out maybe a week or two ago. The Oreo Coke Zero.
I will tell you this: that the guy who is the video producer on my my award-winning podcast, Never Not Funny, Elliot, sent me a photograph. Yay or nay? Just yesterday. Yeah. And my response was gross.
So gross.
Have you tried it?
I tried it today because my day job, I work night crew at a grocery store. So I tried it on my break because we got a batch in. I thought it was so gross. I was like, whose idea was this? Like,
I'll tell you this. I will try it. My headphone is driving me bananas, by the way. I apologize for being distracted by it.
But you might like it though.
No, it won't.
People
it'll be too sweet and stupid for me. There's no reason somebody should drink a cookie. That sounds stupid. Drink a cookie in soda form. If it's in a milkshake form, I think it'll be okay. But I also hated there was like a Coke Zero Spice that came out, and I think it's still available. And I hated that upon first drink. And then now, if that's all the gas station or 7-Eleven has in stock, I will drink it and think, you know what, it's better than I thought. So. Yeah. I may try the Oreo, hate it with a passion, then be forced to drink it again and go, you know what, it's not bad. So I don't want to prejudge it, but I'm guessing I'm going to be on your side. I think it's going to be horrible.
Will you do me a favor and text me once you try it, just so I know? Because I think this is an answer I have to know.
I'm going to tell you this in advance. We are not going to become text friends at all.
No, or email, whatever.
I'll email you. Yes, I will email you. But texting is just. That is not going to. I don't need you asking me to bail you out of jail at some point. I don't need you asking me to. Hey, my car broke down. Could you? Nobody else was available. No, none of that's happening. We're gonna email at best.
Okay, but email me because I need to know.
I will email you immediately.
Okay, cool, awesome.
I may if I leave the home today, and I may not because it's 4,000 degrees outside. If I leave the home today to run some errands, I will go out of my way to get one of them, and I will try it and report back to you.
Awesome. Because I thought it was the most gross thing ever. And if you agree, I think I'll Venmo you the $2.
Well, no, you don't have to pay me back for it. No. I was on television once. I could afford a soda.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you because the shows like you did one of them. It was the 101 biggest celebrity oops or something.
Oh yeah, those two. Yes, I did a lot of those back in the day on E.
Yeah. I was wondering because back then, I felt that was cool because they just put comics up to talk about these things. And I was like, how was that experience? Because that's kind of like how it is now. You know what I mean? Like everyone's trying to do that. on their shows. Does that make sense?
Yeah, or people are. I think even if, and I got stuck watching one last night. People are making their own version of that on YouTube.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, like the 20 funniest SNL moments, and then
Yeah. Yeah.
they have a very dry delivery that doesn't keep me invested. Yet I couldn't turn it off. Like, in fact, the one I watched last night and it was infuriating me was the Jay Moore's top 10 impressions.
Okay.
And they showed literally 12 seconds of Jay Moore's impressions and then 3 minutes explaining the impression. It's like, just say, and number two, Al Pacino, and then show him do Al Pacino. You don't have to give me Al Pacino's career resume. That's not the point of this. Anyhow.
But what if they don't know who Al Pacino is? You know what I mean?
Then they shouldn't be watching Jay Moore's greatest impressions. That's where I stand on that. But I'll answer your question about the E thing. It happened around the same time. Started doing them around the same time as VH1 doing Best Week Ever and greatest moments from I Love the 80s or I Love it wasn't Best Week Ever. Yeah. It was it morphed into Best Week Ever, but it was I Love the 80s, I Love the 70s, I Love toys or whatever it would be. And so I was kind of at the time I would straddle both worlds. I would do both 101 greatest SNL moments, 101 greatest soap opera moments, or so on and so forth. And then I would also do the I Love the 80s, I Love the this. And then one of them, I don't remember if it was E or VH1, said, you got to, we can't have conflicting people. We want to have our own identities. And for whatever reason, it makes no sense to me to this day because I'm more of a music guy, and VH1 should have made more sense, but I stayed with E. Right. And it was like, well, I'll do the E ones. And then literally the next day, VH1 went, okay, we're going to start paying people to do these. I'm like, wait, what? And E was still like going, isn't it fun to do these for the love of the game? I'm like, not so sure I love it anymore. But they were fun. You got to, they would send you the 101 clips that they were going to count down. And then you could write, they would like it if you had, a little, anecdote or a joke for each clip, as many as you could. So they, could, fit you in, along with the other talking heads that would be on there. And, so I would put together as many as I could, or I'd have some anecdotes or, whatever based on the, again, SNL or, a Celebrity Oops with, like you mentioned, was another one.
Yeah.
But I know my answer is long-winded, but one of the biggest, not one of the biggest, no, that's not true. We got a lot more later, but the biggest piece of hate mail I've ever received, like the biggest bulk of hate mail, was when one of the clips was Phil Hartman doing his Frank Sinatra impression. And they had already done Joe Piscopo. Like and I'm going to make these numbers up. Let's say Joe Piscopo as Frank Sinatra was number 89, and Phil Hartman as Frank Sinatra was number 22 or whatever.
Right.
And so when I got to Phil Hartman, I said, see, this is what it should be. Phil Hartman did him right. Just a dumb Italian being stupid or whatever I said. And I go, as opposed to Joe Piscopo trying to kiss the ass of the Sinatra, estate. And dude, the emails that came in, how dare you, especially with your name Pardo, you're a fellow Italian. How do you disrespect Frank like that? I mean, it was crazy how much hate mail I got from that.
Oh my God.
And I that was at a time where I responded to hate mail. I certainly do not anymore, but back then I would be just like, I'm a comedian making a joke on a comedy show. I'm a comedian making a joke on a comedy show. Like that's also, I kind of stand by that. It was funny because Phil Hartman made fun of Frank Sinatra and Piscopo's didn't, and it's a comedy show. And I think that you have your job is to be funny, and Piscopo wasn't, and Hartman was.
No, yeah. Oh my God, that's so funny. Because I look at my comedy, and this is like an honest answer. I feel I would be pretty good on those shows if I'm at the level I am now. But when those shows were on when I first started, I don't feel I would be good at all. Does that make sense?
Sure, of course. I mean, we all we get better and we improve and we grow. I mean, that's there's also people that are great that they might be some of the best comics that that wouldn't be good at that thing at all. That wouldn't be good on I Love the 80s or 101 Celebrity Oops, but they could be some of the greatest joke writers or comedians of all time that just, that's not their bag.
Yeah. So I really hope they make the I Love the 2020s or something.
I guess that's what it would have to be now, right? For anybody to give a crap.
But that would be like the worst one, wouldn't it? Because there's a pandemic, and
what do you got? Pandemic?
Cats, the movie.
That's the movie. You got vaccines.
Right.
Um,
Death.
Cats the movie.
Cats the movie.
Uh, Wicked the movie coming out, so that might be trouble.
I think it's just going to be as good as Cats.
I think it can't be worse, right?
It can't be. No, definitely not.
No, Cats the movie stunk. I'm a big musical guy, but I don't even like the musical Cats. I mean, I think there's a couple of good numbers in there, but
Yeah.
overall, I think it's not a good show. And then the movie was awful. And I don't like Wicked. I know some people think Wicked is their favorite, but I don't like Wicked as a show either. But I'll give the movie a shot, and maybe I'll like it, and I hope I like it. I like it.
Yeah. You know what movie I hope they make is Hamilton. I think
that's gonna happen.
Oh,
Right?
is it? I hope so.
Sure, it has to happen at some point.
Yeah, because I think that would be a great, and that might even be better than the play, because the play I feel is a little way too long. You know what I mean?
You think so? You think, boy, oh boy, I think it's. I have.
You think it's just right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I've seen it 5 times in 4 different cities because I went nuts. I went whack job for Hamilton and was flying to other cities to see it because I again was nuts.
Right.
So I guess I never found it long because I made the effort to get there. And so, if I'm flying to New York, I don't care that I'm sitting there that long,
Yeah.
So, and then when I would listen to it, I don't know, maybe what do you think they can cut? I'm not so sure where, I don't know what they could cut.
I mean, I don't know off the top of my head, but the music soundtrack is pretty long, so I think you don't really need half that songs. And I think in a movie they could really trim that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I know what you mean, but I don't know what I don't know what they could cut.
Maybe the whole king, when the king sings and stuff.
The king sings it. That's the best part of
it is
highlights.
100%. But in a movie, they could probably cut that.
You can't cut that. You can't cut them leaving England, and then the king has to be there to tell them that they're making a mistake.
Oh, okay.
How do you cut the king, you jacket? No.
I'm just giving ideas off the top of my head.
You want to cut the duel at the end as well? You want to get rid of that? You want to get rid of all the important plot points?
So I think they should start it with the duel, right?
And then flash back for the rest?
Yeah. Like start with the 10 commandments, right? Hamilton, then 1, 2, 3, and then on the 10th one, they shoot it, and then you start with the story. Right?
Listen, I mean this as nicely as possible. I hope they don't come to you for actually, that is not a horrible idea. I want to crap on it. I really do. But it's actually not a bad way if you're going to make a movie, and because it can't just be a play. It can't just be a movie. I guess it could be, but yeah, you know what? I reserve making fun of you until we see the movie.
All right. Asperger's wins. Yes.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Oh man, that was awesome. I wanted to ask you in comedy when you first started, because you started in the boom where everybody was getting a lot of work, and there was no TV, there's like Carson, but there's no like real stuff like Comedy Central specials and all that stuff unless you were on HBO.
Well,
So,
there was even the Improv and even the Caroline's Comedy Hour, there were all those the stuff that was on A&E, and then there was MTV's Half Hour Comedy Hour. So there was a lot of that. I don't want to.
I guess maybe I'm saying. I guess what I'm saying is credits really didn't mean anything. Like you could get work and still do comedy.
Oh, you could absolutely get work and still do comedy, but the credits, even when I got Caroline's Comedy Hour, which I got very early, I guess just a couple of years into my career, even that made a difference though, because then bookers took you more seriously. So you could get more work, or certainly then they had something to put on a poster or a flyer. The internet didn't exist. And then the people that had done Carson, or Pat Sajak had a talk show at that point, which was a good talk show. I stand by that. And then Rick Dees had a late night talk show, and so any of those were very helpful, and also then got your money up because you were going up against people that didn't have any credit. So if you had even one TV credit, you might be able to get an extra $500 out of a club to headline. I was not a headliner at that time, but I know that some folks were able to make more money because of that. But I stepped on your question by interrupting to tell you there was some television.
Well, no, then that question doesn't really make sense, because I was going to say it seemed like it was more word of mouth on who's funny to get into clubs and stuff, and now it's all about how many credits you have.
I think, well, you know what? I don't disagree with. I do think there is or how many followers you have. Really at this point, it seems to be more interesting to bookers and club owners. Whether you're funny or not is secondary to how many followers you have.
Yeah, I wouldn't
But
even say secondary. I would say thirdly.
yeah, I know, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's funny. You should play into it a little higher up than it does. Um, when I started, like any comic, you're not going to start working the A+ clubs. So the A+ clubs were the clubs that had the guys that were on the guys and girls that were on television, and that you recognized, and then people that have since gone on to be mega stars. At the clubs I was working, the C and B level clubs, it was what you're speaking about. All word of mouth. Hey, I just worked hey, this kid just opened for me, Jimmy Pardo. He's really funny. You should book him. Then I would get a phone call up from a club in Cincinnati, Ohio. Hey, Fred Klett just worked here, said you were great. I should book you. And then, so I got a lot of work that way. I got very lucky that I worked with a lot of people that found me funny, probably more off stage at that time than on stage, but very grateful for those folks that did do that. But to your point, it was very word of mouth at that level club, but the credits I think helped you at the higher level clubs, which eventually then I got to.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thanks for your time.
No, so like it was easier to be a comedian back then than it is now, basically.
Well, it was easier because it was the late 80s, early 90s, and there was a comedy club in every bar. I mean, or a comedy night in every bar, and not just not bringer shows, and if your listener doesn't know what a bringer show is when, the booker says, yeah, you can do my show, but you got to bring 5 people, and then 5 people have to pay and sit there and watch you suck and watch other people suck. And, as you try to improve, these were, Champs Bar and Grill has comedy night. And then people would pay a cover to watch comedy night in a small town, or a small suburb of Chicago, or in Indiana or Michigan or Wisconsin, where I started, all those states. And people were there to see comedy. And so they needed to book an MC, a feature act, and then a headliner. And the headliner was somebody you never heard of. He just happened to be the guy going last.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of those. And so they needed a lot of talent. And because of that, I was able to quit my day job way earlier than I should have, because I was getting so much work as a comedian that I could not do both.
Yeah. Would you say when you worked at the record stores, though, that kind of like helped loosen your mind on how to write jokes?
I never was and to this day, I'm not a great joke writer. I think there's a possibility I was funnier back in my record store days than I am now. I don't know if that's fair, but I know that there were no stakes other than making your friends laugh, and just being, so I think that I got my improv skills from working with these very funny people. I got very lucky in that I always worked at record stores that somehow amazingly also had funny dudes and women that worked there. And so we did nothing but make each other laugh for 8 hours a day, in addition to our love of music. So I think that got me loose, so that when I did my first open mic, which went okay, but I was able to, something happened. I forget what happened. Something happened where I was then able to improvise, and that of course killed. And then, so I think it prepared me in that way. Maybe, let's say yes. Why not?
I wanted to ask you one music question, because I'm one of the type of comics where I don't really enjoy music, mostly because like with my Asperger's syndrome, loud noise really gives me meltdowns and stuff. So I can't listen to a lot of music, but I do enjoy the Violent Femmes. I wanted to enjoy, was that your jam?
No,
not at all.
No, I mean, no, I was more of a, certainly in the 80s. And when I was working at the record store, I was very much a, what would now be called classic rock. Very 70s and 80s, arena rock, classic rock, not hair metal. I was never really a hair metal guy, but more, Styx, Journey, REO Speedwagon, Chicago, along those lines, Survivor. And then eventually it got heavier into Pink Floyd and Springsteen and Bob Seger and some other things. UFO, Kiss, of course, growing up, I loved Kiss and Foreigner. So like that sort of thing. And then I dabbled a little bit into The Cure
Yeah.
and New Order, and then, but the Violent Femmes never really. They seemed a little too outside of my box, and
Right.
I never even revisited them. They just weren't. They just didn't hit my ear right.
Huh. Well, we have different tastes on music then.
I
That's
guess
what
so.
I'm saying.
I
We've
bet I'll say
got
this. I think the Violent Femmes, and I mean no disrespect to your Asperger's, it would cause me to have a meltdown. Would
That's pretty fair.
what's their big hit?
Blister in the Sun.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's
It's
no.
it's a song about masturbating.
Well, I mean, listen, I like any topic, any song that talks about whacking it, I'm in on. So maybe I will revisit that song now that I know more about it.
Maybe that's why I like him, because it's kind of a funny song. I don't know, but
It's also
yeah,
something we could all relate to.
or at least 50% of the population.
You think 50% do not?
Oh wait, yeah, no, ladies do too. I thought
Yeah, I said we all
no,
do,
but the song was about a guy doing it.
I
That's what
understand.
I'm saying. Yeah,
I get you. Yeah.
all right, excellent. I wanted to ask you about like do you remember your worst road story where like everything, and I mean everything, just went wrong? Like the plane showed up late, the Uber driver got a flat tire, stuff like that.
You know, I mean, there was a couple times, I mean, there's no real where everything went wrong, planes, trains, and automobiles style.
Yeah.
But, there's one time going for, just, yeah, and this is just what happens to a road comic going from Chicago to Omaha. There was a jackknife semi that caused me to be late for the gig, but which is stressful because then you're stuck on I-80 for hours and and it was before cell phones. So you couldn't really even like
Yeah.
contact them to say, hey, I'm running late until you got to the next rest area, which could have been, 5 minutes before the show of saying, hey, I tried to call you earlier, but I couldn't because I was stuck on blah, blah, blah. But so stuff like that would happen. Snowstorms, blizzards, which was, white knuckling it through whiteouts and just trying to get to the gig without, going into a ditch. But really, the things that stand out to me are just the shows of that just, the bombs that are just beyond, even after you get good, you still, I mean, knock on wood, I haven't bombed in
Years.
a decade. Yeah. But I mean, I've had okay shows.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? But for the most part, people that are coming to my shows now are coming to see me and they like me. And so it's, it's kind of built in that it's going to be okay. You know what I mean? It's going to be good. Minimum, it's going to be very good, but most nights it's going to be great because again, they're there for me. But in the old days where you had to go up, basically, even as a headliner, you go up in, let's say Grand Rapids, Michigan, you go up cold and you got to convince a room full of people, to your point earlier about, even at the time I would have, you've seen them on the Tonight Show, you've seen them on Craig Kilborn, you've seen them on this or this and this. They didn't. And
You're
so
right.
they, this guy's done some TV, so he must be good. Well, I don't know anything about him. So and you got to win them over. You got to almost instantly convince 250 to 300 people in this comedy club why they should listen to you. And sometimes they don't want to. Sometimes you are not their cup of tea. And, there were some nights where it just, in fact, I just told the story. I was working with the headliner was Bobby Gaylor, who was a really funny guy. And we went shopping that day and I bought because it was below zero outside. Working in Indianapolis, it was below zero. So I bought a sweatshirt to wear on stage. Uh-huh. And then so we get to the club and I take off my jacket. I've got the sweatshirt that I bought. And he's like, you're going to wear that on stage? That's not a stage shirt. I'm like, it's 40 below zero. Nobody's going to care what I'm wearing. Well, right. Somehow they all cared what I was wearing. Like it just completely made everybody this stupid sweatshirt just made everybody like, maybe it was ill fitting. I don't even remember what the problem with it was. But I remember I got heckled and the heckler won. And like, there's nothing worse than the heckler winning. And
for sure,
go back at the heckler and the audience is like, we're not on your side, dude. We're on the heckler side. You suck. Get off the stage. Like, so I've had those nights. I've had nights where I've been chased to my car by a guy who didn't like me, a joke that I said, or, that's happened more than once. Once in Illinois, once in Michigan. I was chased maybe twice in Michigan. I was chased in my car. But it's I think that's the life of a road comic. I think you got to kind of take those those beatings and I think they make you a better comedian. They
Yeah.
certainly make you. I mean, there was one night in Dayton, Ohio, where it just wasn't a good show, and I forget who was opening for me. They did very well. It was a second show Friday, which notoriously to your listeners is horrible. Second show Friday is always a rough show, and they just hated me from the second I got up there, and I just couldn't. No matter what I did, crowd work didn't work, self deprecation didn't work, like nothing worked. And I just remember driving back to the hotel, and I told the story before. I didn't even make it to the hotel. I pulled into a Best Buy parking lot and kind of just sat there and I don't want to say I cried, but maybe I cried and just was like, what am I even doing?
Yeah.
Am I, it's like, is it worth it? Why am I doing this? Is this fun to, 45 minutes be stared at and, have people just talk over you? And so like, it's just a collection of crummy stories as opposed to like
One
one.
specific.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna make a bad joke when you were telling how like you went to the Best Buy and just cried. I was gonna say, and ever since then, Jimmy, I haven't opened up for you.
Well, yes, you buried me that night. So that's why I had to kick you. And that's why I gave Norm your phone number. I said, you got a better shot with this kid.
Oh man. But I wanted to ask you like because you also did Conan and stuff,
Mhm.
and with your podcast, your podcast isn't really interview, it's more fun, but you do have some segments of an interview, and I wanted to know like whenever you have someone tough to read, like how are stuff that you could just jam it like that, because I'm sure if you had people that are tough to read.
Well, you know what? To your point, you're right. My show is more like I just kind of describe it as like when a new guest comes on, don't think of it as a Q&A interview. Think of it more like we're in the green room hanging out before a show, and
Right,
it's more
yeah.
just comics talking and comics riffing. Again, doing what we're doing here, sharing some road stories. That it's that. But then sometimes people just they don't know maybe how to do that very well. So then that's when, as the host of the show, I've got to shift gears, and then it does become more of a Q&A.
Yeah.
Where'd you grow up? Do you have brothers and sisters? Which I mean, I am interested in. Even with people I know, but it becomes more of that, and then you get to know the person, and then that person will leave the studio, and we'll all look at each other and go, well, that was a little rough sledding, but you know what? I think people will enjoy it because we got to learn about a new person. And so like we get information that way, as opposed to just the usual grabassery that will happen on my show. So I think you use the different clubs that are in your bag, and you do the best that you can with them.
Yeah, definitely. And then like that's what another thing that I find fascinating is because learning about people, regardless, if their their energy matches mine or whatever, it's still kind of fascinating. You know what I mean?
I
And
do. And it's, I very much, I equated it a little bit to a first date. I mean, which I have not had, and I've been with my wife for 26 years, but, um, I had many a first date, from high school, middle of high school until my, in 1998 met my wife. And, you ask that first date about themselves. You know what I mean? It's like, I wasn't being a comedian. I was being a person asking them, about themselves and see if we're compatible and so on and so forth. So I think it's kind of like that with a comedian or an actor or a musician that comes on the podcast that might not be, a riffing type of performer. And so then you gotta get to know them that way. And like I say, it's a first date, getting to know them and asking those questions, and and hopefully you get some decent answers out of them.
yeah, and then I want to respect your time, but I have three more
Sure, take your
questions.
time, dude. We're good.
Okay. So like I wanted to ask, have you ever asked someone to do Never Not Funny, and they said no, like maybe especially when you were first starting out, and they just kept saying no, and then eventually they said yes?
I'm gonna say no.
Oh,
I mean, I don't know if anybody. I mean, when I started, it was an interesting window of time in that nobody knew what a podcast was when I started. So when I would reach out to famous people, they initially would, I guess they would say no, or the publicist would say no. And then I would write them again and say, hey, I'm just reaching back out. And they would go, oh yeah, he's got some time. And then that person would come on and do it. Um, and then there was a little window where they kind of knew about podcasting. And so, I would be part of the, the interview stop for some folks. You know, they would hit me and they'd hit Marin, and then they might do Jimmy Kimmel Television, Conan Television. But I was part of that little, you know, PR train. And then now there's so many podcasts that and, you know, the joke is that it's become jury duty, that we're all, you know, incestually doing each other's shows. And, you almost hope somebody, when you run into somebody at the mall, please don't ask me to do your podcast. Please don't ask me to do your podcast. At the same time, you're like, please do my podcast.
Right.
But nobody's ever, again, all my answers are very long-winded, and I apologize. But
no, I think it's fascinating.
There's the folks that, and they still exist, you know, and they're kind of outside of the comedy world. I mean, Tom Hanks is hysterical. I mean, and I've asked Tom Hanks's people many a time if they would do the podcast. And I think that window is closed, where it's like now my show is being dwarfed by Conan O'Brien and Smartless and other shows, where like if Tom Hanks is going to take the time to do a podcast, he's going to do their shows because it's going to be more bang for their buck, or at least the publicist will think it is.
Right.
As opposed to, you know, Tom may have more fun on my show. I'm not saying he would. I'm saying that all those people are talented. I'm not in any way saying they're not. I mean, Conan O'Brien gave me a career, for Christ's sake. I'm certainly not putting him down. He's the funniest man I've ever met in my life. But I think publicists go, well, Pardo doesn't have the numbers that Smartless does. Let's just go to Smartless. So I think that's kind of happening now. So I think the days of me reaching out to like Tom Hanks and Julie Louis-Dreyfus and, you know, Steve Perry, formerly of Journey, Mandy Patinkin is one, Patti LuPone. Those are the ones that are kind of the ones that stick with me. Like I missed my window to get them, and I don't think it's going to happen now, and that bums me out. So those are the ones that I've heard no from. But again, I don't blame the performer. I blame the publicist.
Right. Well, I want you to know, if, you know, because you know this is more than anyone, comedy, something could happen overnight and someone could be megastar famous. And if that ever happens to me tomorrow, I will get Tom Hanks for you for your show.
You listen from your lips. First of all, I hope for your sake the fame happens, and then to use Reagan trickle down economics, trickle down casting. I will take the booking.
All right, cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, the guest I would love to get is John Cusack, and I just think that there's an energy about him. I don't know.
He's gone nuts.
It definitely's gone nuts, but I'm not talking like political views or whatever. I'm talking about his art, like his movies.
I don't think he likes talking about his art, though, right? Doesn't he?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of why I want to talk to him. You know what I mean?
But you're not going to get anything out of him, though. I think you're gonna. It's going to be "Don't Meet Your Heroes." I think it's going to be one of those.
So I listened to a podcast that David Letterman did, and they asked him who was his hardest guest he had to interview. And he said Steven Seagal. He said Steven Seagal was so bad because he gave him no energy, nothing, and he just didn't get him. And then he said, and the worst part is I had to interview him twice that year.
It's funny.
So, like, I kind of admire that because maybe that would make me a better interviewer. You know what I mean?
I do, but I don't. I fear don't meet your heroes. I think Cusack might tick that box for you. Here's I could tell you my two John Cusack anecdotes.
Okay.
By the way, there was once a review about my podcast and my stand-up that said, the great thing about Jimmy Pardo is he has an antidote for everything. The downside is they're not always interesting. And fair, very fair. I'm not going to that's a fair review. I'm not mad at that. When I worked at the record store, I decided one day to call John Cusack's house and tell him that I thought The Sure Thing was great. And whoever answered the phone said John couldn't come to the phone, but they would pass along that message. So that's anecdote number one, that I called John Cusack's house. And then secondly, I was working at the Catch a Rising Star in Chicago in the middle of winter. And it was on a Monday night. And I came out and I went to get my car. And in the hotel, there was a parking lot next to the hotel. It's snowing out and it's icy, Chicago winter. And there's a car doing donuts in the parking lot. And like, look at who's this a-hole doing donuts? Crazy. And then the car spins and kind of comes at me almost like a 70s detective show. The car slides my direction and stops, and looking me right in the eyes from the driver's seat is John Cusack.
Whoa.
John Cusack was doing donuts in the parking lot of Catch a Rising Star.
Did Did he say, Jimmy, got your message about the sure thing? Thanks.
He
It's
did.
been up.
Appreciate it. I just wanted to say hello. Just want to get your attention with the donuts. I appreciate the nice words 10 years ago. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and then my second to last question, I wanted to ask, what is your biggest fear when you started comedy, and do you still have that fear now that you've been doing it for so long?
What is my biggest fear? I used to have a fear that people would just figure out one day that I wasn't funny. Like I'm a fraud, like I've been fooling people. Like, and I think I recognize it's an irrational fear, because I think history's on my side that I prove it I'm funny. But there was always that, because I'm not the greatest joke writer in the world, and that's not my forte. And luckily, I've made a career, outside of being able to write jokes. And some people, Norm being one of them, great joke writer, Jerry Seinfeld, great joke writer. Brian Regan can do an act out better than anybody else, but there's also jokes along the way. Nate Bargatze, John Mulaney, to use two guys that are current. Are there two better joke writers than Nate Bargatze or John Mulaney? I don't think there is. I mean,
not right now.
And so that's not what because I don't do that. I always felt like at some point somebody's going to there was the fear the head of comedy was going to say, well, you don't fit the box of a comedian because you don't write jokes, scram. So I had that fear. So that fear is, I guess, no, I no longer have that, but that was my biggest fear for years of, they're going to figure me out.
I think that's the fear I have too.
Yeah.
And I think that it's just kind of, because like all my friends are dying. So like, I feel maybe that like Norm died, Saget died, everyone, I opened up for those guys a lot. So like,
right.
I think that's kind of where it's like, now I really don't have anyone in my corner. Does that make sense?
It does. Oh boy, that sucks. That got sad.
No. But I'm just saying, like, I think that I have that same fear.
Yeah,
where I have to overcome that.
Right. Yeah.
And
we picked the tough business, man. I mean, it's being funny is just part of it. Like we said earlier. I mean, it's like it's being funny and being lucky and getting the right representation and whatever, putting your reels on Facebook and getting clicks and all that horseshit that goes along with show business.
I've been doing that. It's not working for me.
I think it worked for a few people. It's the same as like when Dane Cook got on MySpace. That worked for Dane Cook. And then every comedian was like, I got to get on MySpace and got to get a bunch of followers like Dane and I'll be famous like Dane. Well, it's like, no, Dane made that work. That was what Dane did.
Right.
You got to figure out your path. And I think with reels and other things, TikToks and stuff like that, I think it obviously worked for Matt Rife, whether you like his comedy or not, that's up for debate. Who's the woman out of Nashville? I can't pull her name at the moment, but
the Hawk Tua girl, right?
Well, not her. I'm not going to, not going to give that 15 minutes was too much time for that young lady. Nice girl from what I could tell, but I mean, come on.
Well, you said Nashville. I think
what is I'm going to look it up because it's going to drive me nuts, and it's not fair because she's a very, but it worked for her. How do you find reels?
I don't know. I'm the most. I don't know social media. I'm so bad at socialness, so I don't really.
Damn it! What is it? Lauren something? Damn it! I can't pull her name.
Just put it in your email on the Oreo.
Oh, here she is. What is it? Leanne Morgan.
Leanne Morgan.
She's like, she's like 50.
Oh, I interviewed Leanne Morgan.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. I love Leanne Morgan. Yeah. She's like in her 60s and she just got her special. Yeah. She's great.
So, but it worked. But she finally hit. She was just a road comic. And then she started doing these, the reels and stuff like that. And then during the pandemic, and it hit. And she went from just working comedian to, I think she just developed the show with Chuck Lorre. Yeah. And selling out theaters. Yeah. So, you don't know. You don't know what's going to click or hit for you. And, again, I'm very lucky that I got into the podcast game very early. And so that clicked for me. And, jumping in now, I know it's from people that are in my world and in my life that it's, it proves to be difficult.
Yeah. And then I just had a quick question. You don't need to answer this if you don't want to, but one of my favorite joke writers is a guy named Drake Sather.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about the olden days. I was wondering, did your paths ever cross with him?
Never did, other than me seeing him on TV. You know what I mean?
Uh,
Just thinking he was, I'm just going back to that young comedian special when Dennis Miller made the
it was so great.
whatever he said after Drake, like I don't like this guy stepping on my dark. Whatever he said something about complimenting Drake's great joke writing.
Yeah,
and man, was Drake. Yeah, it's sad. I mean, there's a lot of sadness in comedy. Obviously, people that have left us way too soon. But man, that guy was a great joke writer. He was one of those guys that when he came to Chicago and he would come to the Funny Firm or at the Improv. I can't remember where he would come, which club he performed, but we would, as comics, we would do our own shows locally,
right.
and then race over to see, when Spade was young and he would show up at those clubs, and Sather and Bill Hicks would work at the Funny Firm, and we would all go to watch these guys, Larry Miller, and as young comedian, Richard Jenny was another one. We'd all go and we just would show up for the late show Friday, late show Saturday. It would be after our shows, or show up on a Sunday or a Thursday to watch them and just learn.
Yeah.
I think so many young comedians today don't do that. I don't think they go and watch and learn. I think, and maybe social media has something to do with that. Maybe Netflix has something to do with that. They're able to watch that at home, but we didn't have that. So we had to, go out on a Thursday and after our open mics.
I do that after shows. Like if I don't have shows, I will always go to the late show because I don't want to like meet the comic and be like, oh, great set. And then like, there's just something about a comic in me where like, oh, I'll be like, oh, can I do a guest set on the second show? Like, I feel like you shouldn't ask for a guest set unless you could do a guest set, but I also feel you shouldn't ask if you don't know them. Does that make sense?
100%.
Yeah.
There's nothing weirder than, and I always feel bad, as a guy now who's been headlining for, 20 years, and with somewhat of a name in the small venues that I do. It is weird. I like to support young comedians. I'm very supportive of young comedians. But it's also like, well, if I let you do 10 minutes, that's taking time away from the other acts that I wanted to be here. Right. I want you to do the time because I want to support you and I want you to be a better comedian. I want to give back because guys gave me guest sets. But at the same time, it's a special night on a Thursday, Jimmy Pardo and friends. And it's like, I don't know you. And so it's weird. So yeah, I think it's always best to err on don't ask, but at the same time, you have to ask.
Yeah.
It's a weird, it's a weird line. I don't, I was very unhelpful with that answer.
No, but I think that's a very helpful answer because, like, for example, if I saw you at Irvine Improv, I'd say, hi, blah, blah, blah. Be like, great set. And then I'll see you next year. And then I have a relationship with you. So the following year, I feel more comfortable to ask you if
100%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
and I know this, I'm going to say no.
Okay. But no, I'm just saying
say no. And I'm going to pour my Oreo Coke Zero over your head. That's what's going to happen.
Well, Jimmy, where can the folks at home follow and support you at?
You know what? I'm still an idiot on X, formerly Twitter. I don't know how much longer I'll be there, but at Jimmy Pardo. And then my podcast is Never Not Funny. JimmyPardo.com is where, the website still has all the information, live shows, podcasts, so on and so forth. And that's where to find me. And just like my horse shit or not, it's up to you.
Well, Jimmy, thank you so much for doing it. I really do appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. It was a lot of fun.
All right. Well, have a great day, and we'll see you. I'll see you on the road sometime.
Look forward to it.
All right. Bye, Jimmy.
Thanks, dude.
All right, guys. That was the review with Jimmy Pardo. Subscribe, rate, review, and we'll see you guys next week on Reza Riffs.